Swami to present his view on present political situation and the relevance of Modi's leadership.
Shri Raghavendra Rao ji, Shri Chakravarti Chatterjee, members of this audience here, from the distinguished citizens of Mangalore, I am very pleased to be here on the platform of the Namo Brigade to speak about the current political situation and the relevance of Narendra Modi. There is no challenge to Narendra Modi today. The Congress party doesn't know who to field. Of course, Ms. Sonia Gandhi wants his son, but his IQ is so low that I've given him the nickname of Buddha. I know much about him because his father was a good friend of mine, Rajiv Gandhi. We politically worked together in the 80s. The Chandrasekhar government, of which I was a minister, was formed with his support. And Rajiv Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi was a great despair. And he was wondering how he would meet his future. Unfortunately, at the moments of crisis, you will not see Rahul Gandhi in the country. The great tragedy of December 16th last year, the Nirbhaya horrible rape took place. He was nowhere in the scene. He was abroad. He was having a New Year's party. Even though it was not New Year at that time, but he was having an extended New Year's party. So I don't think there is any challenge to Narendra Modi. And I've known Narendra Modi since 1972, when he was in the Vidyarthi Parishad. And later, during the emergency, we moved together in the state of Gujarat. I was underground at that time, but in Gujarat because there was a Janata Morcha government, therefore the police could not arrest the government of India could not impose its will on the Gujarat government. And after that, I have watched him, I've seen him perform as a chief minister. He has produced a high growth rate for the economy of Gujarat, which is in excess of 10%. If he can replicate it to the whole of India for 5 years, India will become a developed country in 5 years if we grow consistently year after year at 10% per year, and Narendra Modi can do that. That is why I think his leadership is relevant. Today, our current political situation is in 5 dimensions. First is the dimension of corruption. The extraordinary corruption in our country. The second dimension is the collapsing economy. The third dimension is the national security threats of the country and the national reputation of the country. The last couple of days we have been seeing on TV the way a diplomat, Deputy Consul General of the government of India based in New York, how she has been treated. Earlier on we saw that our soldiers, Pakistani soldiers, crossed the border, caught hold of our unsuspecting soldiers and cut their head and displayed it. It was taken back to Pakistan. We have been, our people have been kicked in China. We don't seem to have any respect now in the world for a country of 120 crore, 1.2 billion people. Therefore, we have to consider what is to be done and how the leadership of Mr. Narendra Modi will make the difference. This is what I propose to tell you. We are today suffering international isolation. Nobody is supporting us on Kashmir. Bangladesh is infiltrating into our country. Our temples are being broken in Malaysia and Kazakhstan and Guyana. So we see all around, the country is today going down. It was a country which we put on in the 1990 when I was a commerce minister, later on held a ministerial rank position in the Narasimha Rao government. We put the government on the track from 3.5% per year growth rate to 9% growth rate. And today, the government has brought it down to 4.5% growth rate. So how do we correct all this? Take the question of corruption. Look at the magnitude of the problem. Indian politicians and businessmen and civil servants have taken money out of this country collected through corrupt means, through the Hawala route, and deposited in secret banks or in secret banking countries abroad such as Switzerland, Isle of Man, Cayman Island, Macau in China. And how much have they deposited? They have deposited 120 lakh crore rupees. Not 120 crore rupees, 120 lakh crore rupees. How many zeros is that? 12 zeros. So, all this is your money. And what does this number signify? The total income tax revenue of the government of India is only 2 lakh crore rupees. And you got 120 lakh crores abroad. If you bring that money back, you don't have to pay income tax forever. Anyway, I am in favor that if a BJP government comes to power in 2014, we should abolish income tax. It's a useless tax. This corruption is having a huge impact on our economy and on our politics and on our national security. For example, on the economy, what happens to this black money? Some of it is sent abroad. Some of it is kept here and spent on land, in purchase of land, in building beautiful houses, equipping the house with Italian marble. It's now the fashion. If you have Italian leadership, you should have Italian marble also. And the prices of land and houses are soaring. Whether the economy is coming down or going up, the prices of land and residential construction is always soaring because of this black money. All the luxury good industries are making tremendous profit. So businessmen say, why should we invest in common man's goods like cloth, making chappals, so on. They're all moving their funds to producing luxury goods in the country. 70% of our investment today, 75% of our investment is going directly or indirectly into the production of luxury goods in a country which has 35% people below the poverty line. This is because black money is finding its market in luxury goods. So naturally the profits of luxury goods are going up. That's why the investment is running there. Land prices are going up because black money is going there. So it is distorting your investment priorities. The government of India also brought in a new financial derivative called participatory note. Every newspaper is afraid to write about it. Because if you write about it, people will raise voices. And that they don't want, because big people are purchasing what is called as a participatory note. What is a participatory note? I take my money through Dubai, through the Hawala, send it to Switzerland. There I withdraw the money in dollars. I put it in a sack, take it to Morgan Stanley or US Fidelity Investments, the counter, and put this sack of dollars and say, give me participatory note and here is my Indian passport. Why Indian passport you have to show? Because no other country in the world permits participatory notes. Only India does. So they give you a piece of paper, suppose you put $10 million, they'll give you a piece of paper in which only $10 million is written. No serial number, no name. And that participatory note is handed to you, you bring it to India, it's legally permitted to bring it to India, no questions asked where you got the money, you give it to photocopy to Reserve Bank, and Reserve Bank will give you a receipt, and with that you go to the stock market and tell the stockbroker, I want to buy stocks. Millions and millions of billions of dollars have come through participatory note. Their money going out and coming back. It is your money which is coming back. They say foreign investment is increased. No. The flow, round trip of the black money is increased. And you put it in stock market shoots up, and you sell, and the profit you make the difference. You take that money to the Reserve Bank and tell the Reserve Bank that I have earned this through participatory notes. Then under the law passed by the UPA government, Reserve Bank has to give you dollars for that rupees, and you take all these dollars and go back abroad and put it in your account after having earned something. Previously, you could not earn any money you kept in Switzerland banks, because Switzerland banks never gave interest. They charged. They put a service charge on you. You have to pay a 2% service charge. Now they are earning 25, 30% on the stock market on black money. And what happens to the stock market? It starts going up and down, up and down. Why doesn't the SEBI, Security Exchange Bureau of India, created to ask questions about where the money comes for your stock purchase? If you buy stocks, they will ask you, where do you get your money from? But Mr. Chidambaram as Finance Minister has exempted participatory notes from such questioning. No questions asked. There was only one problem, and that was that when you made this profit on the stock market, you had to pay capital gains tax of 30%. So this Chidambaram, who is a lawyer and a crook, dangerous combination, he passed a law which said that if any Malaysian company, any Mauritius company makes an investment, then because Mauritius is a poor country of overseas Indians taken by the British as indentured labor, so no capital gains tax for any Mauritius company investing in India. No capital gains tax. So what you do is you take your money through the participatory note, go to Mauritius, invest $1, just $1 you can create a company in Mauritius. And through that Mauritius company you invest in the stock market, no capital gains tax for you. Even the 30% which you had to pay, Government of India will not get. And that's why everybody is now opening a branch office in Mauritius. In 2G spectrum scam I found that all the companies who are accused, they had an office address in Mauritius. So I was shocked as I compared these addresses. I found the addresses are also the same. Then I found the building also the same. I even found the room number to be the same. I sent somebody to check and they said the room number has no furniture, just a lock outside the door. Shell office. And using that they get the tax advantage. So therefore, your stock market is gone out of control today. It's no more the middle class's dream to invest in the stock market. Because of this black money, which has now been facilitated to come back through participatory notes. Mauritius today is the largest investor in India. You see the table of foreign investment in India by countries. It is not USA, is not number one. It is Mauritius. How can a country which has only gambling casinos and beaches, how can it become the largest investor of foreign investment? It is not their money. It's our money coming back, making a profit and going back again. Similarly today, why are the agricultural prices going up and down, up and down? It's again because of corruption. This money that people do not send abroad but keep it here. Because the UPA government made a new law that you can engage in forward trading in agricultural commodities. Not allowed by any country in the world. United States does not have forward trading in agricultural products. So what does forward trading mean? You go and tell the farmer in the wholesale market, I will give you this price, which will be a price which will be little higher than the wholesale price. And they have cash. Farmers want cash, they don't like checks. So with this black money cash, they will take the agricultural production, put it in cold storage, create an artificial shortage, prices shoot up, then they take it out from the shortage. They take it out from their cold storage and the prices come down. If you see the agricultural prices over the last 2 years, all up and down, up and down, up and down. There is no shortage of onions in the country. There is no shortage of vegetables. Any government will raise 2-3 cold storages. In panic, everybody will bring out all these agricultural commodity and the prices will come down. Needs a tough leader like Narendra Modi. So, same thing, the rupee kept diving. 38 rupees, 45 rupees, 55 rupees, 65 rupees, 70. What happened? Everywhere else in the world, dollar is coming down. But India is the only country where dollar is going up. Magic. So I examined what happened. People are saying this problem, that problem, uncertainty, investment, this, that. The real reason was that two important persons one a son and another a son-in-law, were engaged in short selling of the rupee, which is called power trading also. Short selling is power trading. The son-in-law's name is Robert Vadra. He was sitting in Dubai, and the son was Karti Chidambaram, bigger crook than his father. He was sitting in Singapore, and they were telling people, give us your dollar today. That time the price was 55. I will return it to you at 57. So, dollar is not yours. You take it from somebody. He's very happy because in 2 days he says, I'll give you, instead of he'll pay me. It's worth 55 today, but he's ready to pay 57 in 2 days' time. Fine, give it to you. He's after all son of finance minister or son-in-law of Sonia Gandhi. So they give it. Both these people use their influence to see that the Reserve Bank does not take any steps by which the rupee will come down from 55 to 50. If it does, they are finished. Because they have contracted to pay 57 rupees and the price has gone to 50 rupees. So they convert their dollars into that, they'll make losses. So the finance minister tells the Reserve Bank governor, no open market operations. What would the Reserve Bank governor have done to control the fall of the rupee price? Take out out of 277 billion dollars reserves, he could take out $30 billion, put it in the market, price of rupee will go up and dollar value will come down. But he didn't do it. And so the price went up of the dollar, and rupee was selling at 58. This man got the thing at 55, paid him 57 and made a profit of 1 rupee per dollar. And in millions of dollars, he naturally will make crores of rupees. I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister that this son of Mr. Chidambaram is sitting in Singapore and the son-in-law is sitting in Dubai. They are both doing this. It's illegal. Have them arrested. Because our Prime Minister hasn't got the guts to arrest them. But he passes on all my letters. He passed on my letter to the Reserve Bank. Panic, both the son-in-laws came running, son and son-in-laws came back running to India, and the rupee stabilized at 65 rupees. This is how it is done. The rupee should not be more than 10 rupees to a dollar, I'm telling you. And if we get absolute majority, within 5 years we will bring down the rupee from the present 65 to 10 rupees. This is all because of black money. Black money converted to dollars, then they use it for participatory notes, they use it for short selling, and they are completely wrecked the economy. Now you see, there is a national security angle which I want to tell you. The money is taken to Dubai by Hawala agents in India. Most of them are in Tamil Nadu, I'm sure some of them in Mangalore also. And they take it to Dubai. And Dubai, they will make a phone call. They won't take the money to Dubai, they will go to Dubai. Money they will leave here. And they'll telephone from Dubai, Switzerland, to their agent. Say, I have got so many crores given to me by politicians so and so, or businessmen so and so, or a civil servant so and so, and I want you to deposit at the rate of 65 rupees to a dollar please deposit in their bank account so and so number for them. And if anybody is coming from there to India and he wants rupees in a more attractive exchange rate, I can arrange it. You can give him my reference. So the rupee that is kept here is used for those who come from abroad. So government loses foreign exchange at both ends. Now, the only problem with Dubai is that you cannot do any business in Dubai unless the ISI of Pakistan is kept in the picture. They dominate the situation in Dubai as far as the financial markets are concerned. And the Dubai government lets them because they do a pretty efficient job. So all that the ISI wants from our Hawala agencies, whose account are you depositing, how much are you depositing, what is the bank account number, all this is given by our Hawala operators to the ISI of Pakistan. Otherwise they cannot do business. And so Pakistan now knows which minister has which account and how much money in it. So what will happen? All of them pretend to be saints. Today I was watching television, I saw Kapil Sibal saying, we must fight corruption. What a big joke. Of course, if you ask him how much corruption there is in India, they will say zero corruption. Because everything is for him is zero. But he was not educated enough to be taught to count beyond zero. So, our UPA ministers today are being blackmailed by ISI. They tell them, you take a tough line on Pakistan, we will have it published in your newspapers that you have this bank account with so much money in it, and the last deposit you made on such and such day. Naturally, blackmail will be used. And Pakistan is today gaining after being defeated on the ground by our Indian army. And that is why the government of India cannot take a tough stand. We are taking a stand on this young Consul General, Deputy Consul General. Some stand we are taking. But we cannot take this stand with Pakistan. Because they will ruthlessly expose you. So therefore, this black money is affecting your national security. Pakistan has got camps in the occupied Kashmir. We are not able to do anything. Why don't we go and bomb it? No nerves. Why no nerves? Afraid of Pakistan. This state of affairs cannot continue for very long, because in 2 years' time, Taliban will take over Pakistan. And he will take over Afghanistan also. Then Taliban will attack you. You may go on talking about peace, peace, peace. But Taliban has said in its programs, in their manifesto, that India, they call it Hindustan. Hindustan is an incomplete chapter of Islamic history. Why incomplete chapter? Because Islam went to Iran, killed all the Zoroastrians, converted the remaining, and became in 15 years 100% Muslim country. Islam went to Mesopotamia, Babylon, which is now called Iraq. In 17 years they made them 100% Muslim. Islam went to Egypt. In 21 years they made them 100% Muslim. But in India there were 800 years and you are still 80% Hindu. They can't understand. So they say it's incomplete history. Are you ready to fight them? We need a strong leadership. Talk about a relevance of Modi. If he is Prime Minister, Taliban will look towards the other side, not come towards India. your attention this first question. Current situation is so bad that it cannot be rectified by the present people. People get sometimes confused and then they go and cast their vote for people who they think are new people and they should be given a chance. In Delhi, people are now regretting for giving vote to this AAP party. Now people are calling it the PAP party. Because what are they doing? What is their manifesto? They say, oh, we are against corruption. All right, how many cases did you file? 0. All you did was hold press conferences. And what is your other program? Kashmir should be given to Pakistan because that is the best way to achieve peace between India and Pakistan. Batla House encounter was bogus. High Court of India says it is genuine. They say it's bogus. In fact, Kejriwal went and secretly met one Raza, Maulana Raza, whose bravery was to announce a reward of 5 lakh rupees for anyone who cuts the head off Taslim Naslima, the Bangladesh writer, and brings it to him. That was his bravery. And he went and met him and asked him for his vote. The real ideology of the AAP party is left-wing extremism. They are against democracy. That is their own manifesto which they are not making public. I got a copy of it. And today the Congress says we are willing to give you unconditional support. They say no, we will take your support on our conditions. What drama they are doing? Because they know the moment they come to power in one place they will be exposed. Anyway, they are exposed. But I am saying to you, for a democracy you need an established party. And the only way you can maintain the purity of parties is don't let them rule for too long. You made a mistake in allowing Jawaharlal Nehru to rule for 17 years. Then Indira Gandhi to rule for 16 years. The Congress party has been spoiled because of this long tenure in power. In the United States and England, it doesn't happen like that. In no democracy, it happens like that. They will change in America after 8 years, definitely. And in Britain, definitely after 10 years, but often after 5 years. The party performs, keep it. If it doesn't, throw it out. Don't say, oh, this is, the others are no better. That's not an argument. Change is better than no change. And therefore today, the Congress party is so thoroughly bankrupt. We need to get a change. What needs to be done to rectify all this? If you want to curb corruption, then you have to have 3 levels of action. First level of action is to bring in this new internet technology, to remove the discretionary power of the civil servant. I must compliment Rajiv Gandhi. He brought computerization to railway reservation. Before that, it used to be chaotic. Nothing but bribery. You could not get a sleeping berth unless you paid the station master, the ticket collector and the ticket seller. Today you can get it by sending an SMS, you can find out whether a ticket has been confirmed or not. The corruption has come down very substantially. Even now there is some, but not much. If you don't have to go to the office and cajole the peon to wake up his boss who is sleeping inside, of course you have to pay him something to wake him up. But you can sit at home and the computer, you can download the necessary forms. and also submit it through the internet. Then you will bring down that corruption also. So there are some kinds of corruption you can bring down, and they have been brought down in India by bringing this new information technology. The second important thing is that you must catch some big people, not small people. Small people later. Small people get frightened when you catch big people. Bring them to book. We have to do that. We have to catch the top people. Without the top people, the bottom people cannot do corruption. The laws are sufficient. All this talk about law and the Lokpal bill and all, fine, is a good drama. I don't mind. Have more laws. But I have shown under the present law that it is possible to send a minister like Raja to jail and get the licenses cancelled. I have to catch more people. One person I've been trying to catch, but he's got so much grease on him that he keeps slipping out of my hand. That is Mr. Chidambaram, but I'll catch him. One of my many cases will succeed. But I am shocked at the numbers. 2G spectrum scam, what is it? People don't even know what 2G is. Manmohan Singh did not know. Somebody asked him, what is 2G? He said, Sonia ji and Rahul ji. Somebody said, no, I'm talking about telecom. He said, no, I don't need to know more. Sonia ji, Rahul ji, I know, that is enough. You know, when the cordless phone came, you had to, without a wire, you could pick up phone, dial a number, the other place it will ring, and you couldn't talk without a wire. Because your voice was converted into an air wave, and it went as an air wave. Went in a long cycle. But that's all you could do. Dial a number and get the other side. Then came the mobile phone. The cellular phone is technically called. There you could send, not only make phone calls, but you could send email, SMS, you could send your pictures. For that, you have to go to the second generation technology, that is what it is called 2G, second generation. The first generation was the cordless phone, 1G. And that the waves were little and more cycles in it. And therefore more information went in it. Then 3G came, and here you could make a phone call, the other side will see you, and you can see them. You can, as if you are next to each other, you can talk to each other. Which is now coming very useful for our army. They can talk to their wives and children and so on. So that means more waves, more information. 4G is coming, you can send 10,000 pages of documents on your mobile phone, which you can't do today. So there again the waves are even more cyclic. All these have to be sent through the sky. They should collide. So a channel is created for them. That is called spectrum. And that spectrum is scarce. The demand is increasing. In 2001, when the NDA was there, they auctioned the spectrum. And the price was 1,680 crores per 4 megahertz. In 2008, when Raja was in charge of the telecom ministry, our demand had greatly increased because in 2001 there were only 4 crore mobile phones in our country. In 2008 there were 70 crore mobile phones, big demand. So the price of the spectrum also went up, according to estimates, 10 times to what it was in 2001. But Raja said, no, I will sell it only at 2001 price. Why? Because they can keep the tariff down, keep the tariff cheap. That's a bogus argument. Because he gave spectrum licenses to his friends, not by auction, but by first come, first serve. And those companies, what did they do? They went and sold it to foreigners at 8 times the price. Which means they paid a profit without doing any work. All they got was the spectrum at cheap price and sold it at 8 times the price. Of course, Tata sold it to Docomo at 15 times the price. So, the private companies made the money. If the government had auctioned it, they would have got 10 times the money. What they got, there were 9 companies which paid 1680 crore rupees of 2001. So you can see about 15,000 crores is the total revenue. Had the government auctioned it, they would have got 10 times more, which is 1,50,000 crores. Plus the CDMA, this, that added. You can easily see, as the CAG said, you would have got 1,76,000 crore rupees more. 1,76,000 is almost equal to your tax budget. Your tax revenue today to the government of India is 2 lakh crores. One auction, you are getting 1,76,000 crores more. You gave it up. So I went to the Supreme Court and got the thing cancelled. And there was a big furor. There was a big furor. Now there are fresh auctions are taking place. Government of India is getting ready and more. Lots of money. But by the time they get the money, I hope that our BJP government will be in power, so we'll be the government. Same thing with coal blocks. They gave it away free. Had they auctioned it, they would have got how much? 11 lakh crores. Tax bill 2 crores, subsidy bill 2 crores, even then it's only 4 crores. One auction of coal blocks will give you 11 lakh crores. Instead of giving oil fields free of charge to Reliance, if you had auctioned it, you would have got 24 lakh crores. And if you bring all the money from abroad back, 120 lakh crores. Why have taxes at all? Why income tax abolition? You can abolish sales tax also, excise tax also. Everything you can abolish. So there is no shortage of resources in India. Where you put the money? Put the money where this economy has potential. Potential number 1, the young people of India. Thanks to the Indian people who resisted this forcible family planning. The whole America and Europe were telling us, look at China, 1 child per family. Our people didn't listen. Indira Gandhi tried to force it in the emergency. They threw her out. People are not producing more children now. They are less and less. But slowly. As a consequence, today, the average age of the Chinese population is 37 years. Average age. Average age of the Indian is 26 years. 70% of our population is below the age of 35. America's average age is 38. Europe's average age is 46. Japan's average age is 50. All become old. Nothing wrong with being old, but the innovations that are necessary to drive economic growth is done by fresh minds coming out of the university. So the program should be that we modernize our universities. We attract the best faculty by paying them well, giving them academic freedom, building tremendous infrastructure, connectivity through internet, both within India and internationally. Now Harvard and MIT has produced an international syllabus which we can show to our people, to our students, and show them what is being taught there, and our own teachers teaching them better. So we need to create a modern educational system for which we need a lot of money. But there is money. I told you where the money is coming from. We can get more money by abolishing all taxes and putting a bank transaction tax. Every time the bank engages in a commercial operation, giving a loan to a business house, etc., it will put a surcharge of 1.5 lakh or 1.5%, and that money will go to the government. How much money will we get in that? 40,000 lakh crores. Collecting money is not a problem, but you use it for this. Build the best infrastructure in the country, in the world. We can do it. We build very good roads in Nigeria, Malaysia, and in Iraq, but we can't build a good road from Mysore to Mangalore. Why? Because of corruption. Build the infrastructure. Build brand new airports, connect them, interconnect them. Every district should have a small airport so the farmers can use it. This is one priority for us. So the second priority would be infrastructure. Third priority is the sector with the maximum potential. Which is that sector? Not software, agriculture. India has the God's gift of being able to do agriculture 12 months of the year. America cannot, because 5 months there is snow. Europe also same. China for most parts 3 months snow. India throughout the year sunshine. We can grow 3 crops in a year in India. 3 cropping seasons, full cropping seasons, a year in India. And that means tripling of production without any new technology, without getting more new land, the same land. But today we are only on 25% of our land we grow more than 1 crop. Because the farmers don't have funds, farmers don't have credit, farmers don't have water, farmers don't get electricity. They're not able to do it. Provide that. Can it be done? It has been done in Gujarat. You have to go and see it. Gujarat has been growing at 12% per year. So, you can triple production. Not only that, our agricultural products are the cheapest in the world. Rice is sold at 7 times the price in South Africa, in Japan. Wheat is sold as 4 times the price in Europe. Our vegetables, our fruits, our flowers, all are much cheaper than produced elsewhere. Our milk is sold at 15 times the price in Europe. And we have got 150 million cows. But they give only, because of nutrition, they give only 200 liters per year, average. A well-fed cow of Israel gives you 11,000 liters per year. Imagine if we learned from the Israelis and gave our 150 million cows all the vitamins and all that necessary, how much milk we will produce? You can have your bath in the morning in milk. India, golden bird. That milk is flowing like river here. Like water flows in the river. Potential is tremendous. Yield per acre, one of the lowest in the world. Why? For lack of technology. In the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, one experimental plot produces 7 times the output produced in the farm of India. If in India, in an experimental plot, you can produce 7 times, why can't you do it in the rest of India? You have to do what the Indian Council of Agricultural Research does. Provide water, fertilizer, pesticides. When you do that, you can increase your yield to very high level. China produces 3 times as much wheat per acre than India. Japan produces 6 times as much rice per acre as India. Egyptian sand produces more cotton, 4 times as much cotton as we produce in 1 acre of land in India. Okay? So agriculture is the sector with tremendous potential. We can become a global agricultural power. Unfortunately, Jawaharlal Nehru made the mistake of going for the Soviet model of industrialization, which ruined our country. The British ruined our agriculture first by appointing zamindars who bled the agriculture completely. And then Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru brought in the Soviet model, which has failed everywhere in the world. There is no country where the Soviet model has succeeded. EMS Namboodiripad used to tell me in those days when there was so much propaganda about the Soviet Union, he used to say, you know, Dr. Swami, in Soviet Union there is no unemployment, there is no poverty, there is no inflation. So in August 1991 I met him and told him, Mr. Namboodiripad, now there is no Soviet Union also. Broken up into 16 countries. Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. It has failed in Soviet Union, failed in Germany. Compare East Germany and West Germany, you will know. Now because they become one country. So I am telling you that we have missed this opportunity. Narasimha Rao took my blueprints prepared during the Chandrasekhar government for economic reform, implemented it. He made Manmohan Singh implement it. Media were given all the credit to Manmohan Singh, no problem. If as finance minister he could do so much economic reform, why as prime minister he cannot do anything at all? It was Narasimha Rao who did it. The credit should go to him, and a future government should give him Bharat Ratna for what he did for this country. So with one economic plan, reform package of deregulation only, and that too at the central level, we raised our growth rate from 3% per year to 9% per year. They used to say that 3% per year is a Hindu rate of growth. It was a communist rate of growth, but they called it Hindu rate of growth. So I will say that there is no way in which a determined government cannot produce an economic revolution in India in 5 years. We are preparing the plan for it, and we have got a leader who has demonstrated in Gujarat no power cut, no potholes in the roads, and agriculture blooming by making the right decisions. Only 10 years ago, Kutch and Saurashtra was barren land. Go there and see today. Why? Because he insisted that he will go ahead with this Sardar Sarovar Dam project, and that is why. So, it can be done. But I think there is one question I have to say before I conclude. And that is this. We may produce economic growth, but the nation must be secure. Just as you can produce a lovely crop, but if you can't protect the harvest, then everybody will come and harvest and go away. Our country has no shortage of resources. All this talk of foreign direct investment, I will find if they can bring technology, I have no objection. But what is this Walmart? Walmart should come, they will revolutionize retail trade. Why? They are getting whatever we want. Walmart is going to come after getting bank finance from the United States banks at 2% interest rate. It will come to India and dip into our cheap labor pool. We have got crores of traders. If they are to compete with Walmart, how much will they have to pay to get bank finance? Not less than 12%, most likely 18%. 18%, 2%. Is this fair competition? And both competing for the same labor? Labor wages will go up. The traders will hit both ways. So when the American delegation met me, I said, sorry. They said, but we thought you are for market and you are anti-communist, this, that. I said, yes, I am anti-communist, pro-market, but I am also nationalist, that you forgot. I cannot sacrifice the traders because of the unequal competition. Have a fair competition. They said, what can we do to make it fair?